I think they're acting illegally in terms of the Constitution.
Yeah,
in
sure.
fact. But they're creating a fax. They're creating a fait accompli. But no, he hasn't got a mandate to do that. It's unconstitutional.
We mentioned Elon Musk earlier. He's the next thing I want to talk about, obviously, because you can't have a conversation these days without involving Elon Musk. But he held an extraordinary joint press conference with President Trump at the White House, I think, yesterday. Let's listen to him being questioned by the media.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that you're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted, we have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We've won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform.
I mean, you could ask for a stronger mandate from the public. It would just be a bigger majority, wouldn't it? But look, he's denied the claim that he's leading a hostile takeover of the United States government. If he's denied it, it's all fine, isn't it? Alice?
Well, actually, my initial thing was he's got these 12 kids and he keeps bringing the same one, X, everywhere, and I'm worried about the other 11.
I'm not sure it is necessarily 12. It's some
large
number.
Do you think it's now 9? We said 12, but maybe it's only 9. I think 9 probably formally.
There could be more. There could be fewer. It's quite Boris Johnson in that respect.
And it is kind of strong because there's this mandate. He hasn't got the mandate. He's unelected, and we keep forgetting that he's unelected, or they keep forgetting, or he keeps forgetting, because no one actually gave him the right to go and do that. And you can say that, well, that's why they voted for Donald Trump, but I don't remember when they were voting for Donald Trump, they knew they were going to get Elon Musk as well. He wasn't a given at that stage. And now he's absolutely everywhere.
He became one before the election, but I think that it's like with a lot of Trump stuff, it's like, well, he said he's going to do that, but he's not really going to. Oh, no, he is this time, I mean, the Musk purge of the federal government.
There's a thing called the separation of powers, which you learn about when you study American politics. And yes, he's got a mandate in that he's been appointed by the president, who was elected, but the president is the executive arm of the United States government, and he is effectively taking over functions which supposedly belong to the legislative arm, Congress. Congress is supposed to be consulted if you scrap government departments. I think it needs a supermajority to scrap a government department, which is what they're doing, what they did with USAID, and what they're doing with education. So, and they didn't. I don't think they're acting illegally in terms of the Constitution.
Yeah,
in
sure.
fact. But they're creating a fax. They're creating a fait accompli. But no, he hasn't got a mandate to do that. It's unconstitutional.
And what's even weird to me is he's taking USAID and he's taking education, which are really controversial. Whereas actually you could cut back the defence budget pretty easily, and they have those huge contracts, and everyone knows that vast amounts of money is being wasted. But he's not going to defence. He's going for the two issues that are definitely the most sort of democratic kind of what he sees as woolly, but what we would see as
the aid one is
vital.
The aid one's clever because it doesn't affect American voters, and there's obviously you'll always be able to find examples of transgender operas in Colombia or whatever,
or guinea pigs in Peru.
I was reading last week that USAID spends, I think, $3 billion a year on US grain in order to distribute around the world. So there are direct ramifications.
No, I know, but it doesn't. They're not American voters. I mean, obviously, in the long term, because it was set up.
But American farmers are.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. But Kennedy set it up as a kind of an object as a
soft power,
a soft power system, and they will face the consequences in years to come.
Briefly, before we go to the news, what do we think about Musk bringing his child to the press conference? Because I see pictures like that. Speaking as a political kid, I wasn't put in that kind of situation as a kid.
The kid's face wasn't blurred out.
Terrible.
The kid's face wasn't blurred out.
It's really bad.
Which
this
means
guy's got his whole life ahead of him.
Which means that the press and the photographers must have asked permission. Because you have to if the kid's under 16.
But this child's taken everywhere,
and therefore he must have granted it.
No, this child's the one that's taken everywhere. That's most like Musk, isn't he? And he's the one that he's obsessed by, and he's Grimes' eldest child, I think. And actually sounds very similar to him. Loves the rockets, has absolutely no sense of fear, runs around.
I think it's weird,
and it's like his pet. So I think that's what he likes. He likes having a sort of pet with him. But actually, for the child, it's going to be really. I think it's really
strange. And I think, judging by the expression on his face, Donald Trump thought it was quite strange as well.
What's that?
Yes, exactly.
It's another one like you, but smaller. No, I just think when people in the public eye do this with their kids, I just think it blows my mind. I think that they've never seen what's happened to any other kid who's grown up in the public eye ever. It's just a really,
like
really
Harry,
thing
Prince
to do.
Harry. I mean, those royals have grown up, and everywhere they are, they're in those little coats with velvet jackets.
I am currently unpacking the politics of the day and other stuff with Alice Thompson and Robert Crampton. Let's do it. Let's talk about Gen Z. Apparently, it was various things we learned in the paper today. Over 50s have found a new appreciation for life since the pandemic, according to a new study. They're happier than they were before COVID, although they got more miserable during COVID. Meanwhile, Gen Z are at the centre of a big Times survey that's been running all week. There's a series of, there's all kinds of stuff you can read. There's also a video that Alice and I have done speaking to a focus group the other day. They're talking about why they still believe in marriage, that they don't want to fight for the country, why they barely smoke or drink. They watch less porn and have fewer one-night stands than elder millennials. And they often still live with their parents, and they are the loneliest generation out there. There's a lot going on there. Alice, you've written your column about this survey, and we both did that sort of a focus group. In fact, let's hear a clip from the focus group before we talk about it.
Older generations would say that Gen Z are entitled and lazy. Does that make you very angry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So only 40% of Gen Z are working in an office full-time.
I think there's far more awareness on what our individual rights are, which I think previous generations, they just weren't aware of their rights as much as our generation. So I do think there is that element of entitlement.
I think that it's been a really, really positive change in kind of the work culture environment that hybrid working is so normalised now.
Well, we have now worked out that for the first 6 months to a year, it did work, and now people aren't working, they are switching on.
Well, I can't relate to that stat. As far as my office is concerned, I'm always working while I'm at home.
So I found it totally fascinating doing this, Alice. I think the thing about people when they're around about 20 is they know a lot about what it's like to be around about 20, but not an awful lot about what it's like to not be around about 20. And I wonder how much of the things that they told us do you think were to do with just being 20, and how much is to do with being 20 now?
So I think you always get the same kind of gripes from that generation, and
that age group.
Yeah, age group, and I think the Gen Z are kind of pretty standard, but what surprises me is just how much we dislike them. So people, older generations, love their own children.
Not specifically.
Not specifically, but they love their own children. They love their grandchildren. But you look at the comments underneath, and our readers really dislike Gen Z. They think they're entitled. They think they're spoiled. They think they can't be bothered to get up in the morning. They hate words like duvet days. They hate words like sort of, self-care. They think they're all deeply selfish. And actually, I think it's very unfair. If you look at that generation, the only things that are different are that they do smoke less, they drink less, they go to bed early, they actually believe in marriage, which is the one I'm most interested in. They genuinely want to find someone, and that was the one that I found saddest, is that group that we were with, they want to meet up, they want to find people, and they have quite small friendship groups, and they don't seem to be meeting people, and they are not meeting up at all. And there's this word called relationship recession, which we are evidently now in, where if you look at it, very few of them are coupling up, and that is going to be a problem, because if they don't couple up, they're less likely to have children, and we are going to have a even further problem with our birth rate, which is tanking at the moment.
And imagine how much they'll hate the people who are 40 years younger than them.
But there won't be any people 40 years younger if they don't have any children.
Yeah. Robert, what do you think about all this?
I think Gen Z have been badly led and badly advised. I think when you're 20...
By us?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Cumulatively. From the boomer generation onwards. I think, you make the point that Socrates moaned about the younger generation 2,500 years ago, so there's always that. But there has been an accumulative move towards emphasis on rights rather than duties, for instance, and that's not just this generation. That's been going back post-war. But I think what you really want at 20 is you want some leadership. You want some role models. And the phrase duvet day is interesting, because duvet day was not invented by Gen Z. That's been around for 20 years. That's a millennial thing. And also it was something that was wrong. It was pulling a sickie. That was whereas now it's official. It's resilience days. You can have officially sanctioned a day off in order because you basically don't really feel like it that day, or you to regather your mental health, because your battery is drained or whatever. Now that's not Gen Z instituting that. That's the people in power. Older people saying yes, we will make this official. It's showing a shocking example. So no wonder when you're 20, if people are saying, here, you've got all these rights and you're entitled and you don't really need to do this and you don't really need to do that, then you kind of take it on board.
And they are much more victimy, and I think that partly comes from our generation because we're more victimy. We all love having stories about something that's wrong,
cumulative.
particularly with our celebrities. So the celebrities are always, they're always doing interviews saying, "Poor me, I'm either ill or this has happened to me in my life," or there's always some tragedy that they, and then they've overcome something. And I think we've almost done that too much now. And I've written a whole book on it, but I do say that there is an issue when we keep saying to them, "You need to be a victim before you can become successful."
And they're not 20-year-olds. Those people. These are people in their 40s, 50s, 60s.
So some of the coverage earlier in the week, and I think this is actually something I'm going to write about for my column tomorrow, was about the lack of faith, the loss of faith in the idea of Britain, the idea of the country. There was the statistic about how few people would die for the country if they had to, but also how few people are proud of being British at all. And what it seemed to me that was about was they weren't sort of hostile to the immediate environments they lived in. They just didn't associate the immediate environments they lived in with the concept of Britain. And something had really sort of gone and snapped there. I wonder if either of you have any thoughts on that.
I think the concept of nationhood is probably eroding amongst that generation. Yeah, they think, as it would do, wouldn't it, with the internet, social media, globalisation. You would. There was a last gasp of it really with the Cool Britannia stuff, and I think probably leading up to the London Olympics in 2012, where there was this kind of cool to be British, and since then, which is now 13 years, Britain has not done a particularly good job of cementing national pride amongst its citizens, has it?
But
so it's not surprising that they might think that. I think, but then, as we were discussing before we were on air, there was the famous Oxford Union debate in 1936, which said would not fight for king and country.
Of course.
And then 4 years later, there's a bunch of 20-year-olds going up in Spitfires.
If you read what people said about the kids in that debate, it was all about how they were feckless, they were lazy, they were sexually indeterminate. It was your standard abuse.
That's what I mean. That's the whole Socratic thing. That's always there. But you've got to try and pick out the longer term trends. And I think there is an erosion of. I see it with my own kids. That sort of instinctive patriotism is not there in a way. That
what you haven't said, Robert, is that a lot of it came. I think for them came with Brexit. So they saw the adults tearing themselves apart, and they, and that was a big deal for them. And I think Brexit was quite a hinge point. I don't think it was just the Olympics and everyone had enough. I think after the Olympics there was quite a high for a bit, and then we went into this very toxic environment where we were basically in a civil war, when people really you had to choose sides. And actually, I mean, Brexit was meant to make us feel more nationalistic. And in fact, what happened, I think, is that we, that they saw the adults not knowing who they were or what they were, and trying to debate something that was quite amorphous anyway.
And you've had many years of austerity.
But do you think? I wonder if a lot of this stuff happens backwards, really, in a way. Because I mean, there's been a lot written this week. A lot of the comments are like, well, this is all about, it's what they're taught in schools. They're taught to hate Britain. There's a column in the Telegraph today about how it's lefty lawyers that have ruined our kids.
I don't believe that.
I think it happens in entirely the opposite way. This notion that I don't think kids are that shaped by what they learn in school.
No, well, I wrote about this the other day when there was another poll a couple of weeks ago about how 52% of Gen Z would prefer a dictator to elections. And you think, well, these are kids who've had 20 years of citizenship education, and you say, well, the teachers haven't done a very good job, but maybe the teachers are just outgunned by social media and wider forces. So, but that again, that shows that what they're looking for is leadership. If you're prepared to say, oh yeah, we'd in order to get some leadership, we would dispense with elections, then that looks like they want some guidance.
But the ones that talking to Hugo and what I thought was interesting is the bit that they really loved about the Britishness was our culture, and that's what politicians don't get. And they're always deriding the culture and they're putting it down. But in fact, and we all have to do SEM subjects. But what they liked, wasn't it, was the TV. They liked the arts. They liked the music. That's what they thought Britain was good at. The humour.
They just didn't associate that with anything they might be expected to sort of fight and die for, which is perhaps not weird, but it's just not the way we used to talk about it.
But at least they did like that, and they did like the BBC. I mean, it was interesting which institutions they still like, and that was definitely sort of cultural issues and the art scene, rather than none of them talked about STEM or work, did they, or any of the other stuff.
So we've got a few people getting in touch. Victoria says, Hugo, Alice, Robert, perhaps the saddest thing regarding the generation you're talking about is that they don't seem to have much fun, taking everything far too seriously. Whereas Tom says those awful boomers are responsible for this dreadful cohort of malingering no-hopers. Speaking as Gen X, Tom, I see where you're coming from. So,
beautiful.
You've had your ears cleaned. It's apparently better than sex.
Maybe that was an exaggeration.
Alex texts to say, if having your ears cleaned is better than sex, then you're not doing sex right.
Yeah.
Whereas Amanda says, yes, I concur. Getting your ears syringed is better than sex, along with digging up fresh new potatoes, which are cooked straight away, eaten with butter and lots of sea salt. Amanda, it seems like ears aren't really on your mind. Robert, explain yourself and your ears.
It's entirely possible to the previous message that I'm not doing sex right.
Yeah.
That's probably, my wife would probably agree. But, ears. Footballers always say that scoring a goal is better than sex. That's the kind of standard trope. And I think having your ears syringed at the age of 60, so after some considerable accumulation, is pretty good.
So, firstly, what was the problem?
I was losing all hearing in my left ear almost entirely, and about 50% in my right ear.
Over what period of time?
Just a few months, but
right.
I think maybe longer than that. Who knows? When you first start to notice it, but it slows you up, and you become a bit dodgy, and you miss out on kind of banter, and it's actually becoming even difficult to appear on the radio.
Right. I thought you just weren't listening.
Yeah, exactly. And it's tricky, and going to, and especially as sort of social occasions. So I went to do it. Some GPs won't do it anymore. Inevitably, I've had more correspondence on this issue than when I write something serious.
I don't wish to say anything rude, but as a boomer, perhaps you felt this was going to be a more long-term issue. Did you know it was built up, or did you think it might be something to do with,
I went to the doctor
with being of the same generation as the Beatles, for example?
Yeah, when Beatles were born in 1940. They weren't actually boomers, were they? They were
they
born during the war, I think.
Oh, okay.
To be fair, but you could compare me to
John Major.
No, I think he
Bill
was
Clinton.
I think Springsteen was born in 46, I think.
Whatever, you're a young man.
So, yes.
But getting older, were you worried?
No, I didn't. I suppose it was slightly there, but and it's... no, but as soon as the doctor put a little light in there, she said she only had to look for a second, and she saw the problem. And you go and get it done with this sort of wonderful, warm, pumping water.
And is it nice afterwards, or is it a bit frightening?
It's nice in that, as I think I put in the piece, it's like people say when they're on LSD and the sky looks bluer and the grass looks greener, or when you first fall in love, or... It's like that. It's like that. It's absolutely extraordinary. I could hear when she was pulling kitchen roll out of a dispenser on the wall in the nurse's office, and it was like there was this really rip. And
it's like there's pictures of babies the first time they can ever see.
Are you just thinking, Alice, men are pretty gross?
Well, no, because I did actually feel the same. So I thought I'd had a similar problem with my ears, or rather just I'm kind of fascinated by my ears in the way that we all are. Yeah. But I went and got mine done round the corner, Robert, which was quite quick. You can just book it, and it's like 15 quid.
Okay.
Instead of having to go to the GP and take up their time.
That's probably easier, because a lot of GPs don't actually offer it anymore. On the other hand,
I had nothing in my ears, which was really quite depressing, I have to say.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, nothing.
Well, were they hunted around? And
they went through. I had a special probe they put in absolutely nothing.
See, it's a long story, this, but when I was backpacking in India in my early 20s, I had a terrible ear infection, and I went to see a weird Indian doctor who put a big dressing way down inside my ear, and we never saw it again.
The dressing?
I went back a few days later.
That's like
the doctor was gone, so another doctor appeared inside and was like, I can't find anything.
That's like RFK Jr. with that worm living in his head, isn't it?
Exactly,
isn't it?
One day it'll come out my toe. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's long gone.
Me.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry if it's a bit gross, but you did want to discuss it.
Did you get to take home the earwax in like a little bottle?
No,
That's just too much.
No, they blast it out into a cup.
Oh God, I think I'd like the evidence.
Into a cup.
Well, yeah, because it's all liquid by then.
Right. I mean, it's good that it's just earwax, and they're not going like there's there's Frosties in here.
Yes,
what have you been
exactly.
doing?
Yeah. Roman coins.
Yeah. Like, oh, it's my old phone. That's just been a fascinating and troubling period of time. Let's talk about another one of your columns, Robert.
Yes.
Because you write so many.
Yes.
Chivalry, is it really dead? Speaking to the New York Post over the weekend, Donald Trump said Prince Harry was whipped and being led by the nose by his wife, Meghan Markle, who he called terrible. In response, Prince Harry made some comments that some are speculating was a dig at the opening of the Invictus Games.
At this moment, when there is no shortage of crises, no absence of uncertainty, no lack of weak moral character in the world, the values you embody, the way you carry yourselves, not only at the Invictus Games, but each and every day, illuminate a path forward for us all, and for that, we thank you.
Robert, you've written about the difficulty a man has in knowing when and how to stand up for his wife.
Yes.
Before I ask you about that, I want to ask Alice about the extent to which you wish to be stood up for.
So I actually do want to be stood up for, but my husband's the other way around. It's the opposite of Robert's column. He doesn't really. He kind of thinks I can get on with it. I think he thinks I'm probably quite tough, but I wouldn't mind him stepping in. And he's always like, yeah, I think you can kind of fight your own battles. And I think he's probably right that there is something embarrassing about a man sweeping in. On the other hand, I quite like him helping out with the bills or the children I mean, it would have to be something pretty major. And if I was being mugged, yeah, I want him to step in. But I don't want it if it's if it's with somebody else. I don't think I would want it. If it was like Donald Trump said something about me. In fact, I did once have someone who said something, and actually, he's quite good at just thinking everything's entertaining. He'd have just said, "Look, don't worry about it." I think it's just stirring. And also, Robert's completely right. If you're going to diss somebody, you've got to do it properly.
Go on, Robert.
Otherwise, you just think they're weak, don't you?
So tell us your worldview here.
I mean, I sort of know where Alice is coming from, and I think probably my wife doesn't like me trying to wade in and stand up for her when I'm taking offence on her behalf. Probably because she thinks it's kind of performative, and what she'd rather do is I wade in more often with the dishwasher or the bills
and she's kind of right.
The boring stuff, and of course she's right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know whether this was a rebuke to Trump or not from Harry. That's the first thing. And if it was a pretty weedy one. Because why didn't he just say... If he really thinks his wife's been dissed, and she has been dissed, because Trump was pretty... Usually, his usual graceless self, then he shouldn't make it plain. But he doesn't want to be deported. So he sort of did it, but he kind of didn't do it. He kind of wimped it because he's at Trump's mercy for the next 4 years, isn't he? His visa application.
Yeah.
I feel as I say in the piece, I'm very progressive, I would like to think, in many ways. As you said last week, I wrote a fairly feminist column about something that's subject now escapes me. But I'm fairly old-fashioned about this.
Yeah.
I think... And I've lost friendships over it. And not that my wife is a particularly antagonistic person, but occasionally she speaks her mind. People then might object to that. And I've been required, I think, to take sides on occasions within my own family and with friendships, and once in a fight in the street. And she's never thanked me for it. So
I think in your own family that's kind of weird, though. I think with my siblings, I can have we can have quite good arguments.
Depends on your family, Alice.
It never really works if the other half then gets involved, does it? Because actually then you just have to start defending your own family. And it's the same with the kids. I think if I kept saying, "Oh God, your dad's amazing, he's fantastic," back off, they wouldn't like that either.
No.
I think that they'd find that they'd probably then all gang up together. It's a sense, isn't it, that you kind of have to let people get on with their own battles, probably.
I just feel like I've never been in this situation, and I'm wondering where I've just sort of missed stuff. No, I mean, I got into a fight when I was like 19 over someone who was like aggressive with my wife when we were at university. She wasn't my wife then.
Right.
But 19's quite a long time ago.
Yeah, I was 50, and she said, and that was 10 years ago, and she said, "Robert, you're too old to be rolling around in the street."
Well, it was like a proper sort of rolling around in the street type fight. Yeah. What did he do?
He barged into her deliberately,
right,
in the street, but also malevolently. I thought aggressively, and with hindsight, I maybe overreacted, but it was absolutely instinctive.
Yeah, and she took his side.
Yes, yes. I mean, I felt, as I said that when I wrote about it at the time, I felt like chasing after him to say, "Mate, I was justified in doing that. You were out of order," and because everyone seemed to be. I got it wrong.
What about driving? I think driving's the worst one because you're in the car and one of you is actually, you kind of know that the other half is driving badly, and you have to support them, whatever happens, don't you? You have to.
My wife never drives badly, and sometimes listens to the show,
you have to say you're just brilliant.
Join in there.
Yeah, it's always the other person's fault.
Has your wife ever defended you? Do you wish you would?
Yeah, I do. I think she would think I'd fight my own battles, and no, she would tend to stay out of it. I think and that's where the problem comes in, because it's a gender thing about masculine roles, isn't it? And that's where the change is.
Okay, well, look, one more while I've got you guys. We're very nearly out of time. A Belfast hotel has launched a cocktail worth £1,000, or at least which costs £1,000, let's be honest, because they're not often the same thing, crafted with rare whiskies. Would either of you spend £1,000 on a cocktail?
I wouldn't even do it on wine, actually. I don't think enough of a discerning palate.
What was the most you'd spend on a cocktail?
I don't drink anymore, so
a huge amount of money.
if it was non-alcoholic, I suppose if it was really nice, I might spend £5 on it.
Yeah, £1,000 is a lot on a cocktail.
It's an obscene amount of money.
Would you spend it on anything you would consume £1,000.
Oh.
Yeah, cocktails are worth
What, in
it. If
one
you
go?
knocked it over as well.
£1,000 vape, £1,000 roadie cigarette. No,
No.
none of that. No.
No, it's just, it's, no, it's too expensive.
I'm glad I didn't give this subject more time. Thank you very much indeed, Alice Thompson. Thank you very much indeed, Robert Crampton. What a joy having the pair of you here, as always.